Hello, sinners.
Welcome back.
All right. Sin on the go.
Yes.
This episode, we're talking about what, Megan?
We are talking about starting a new school year. Exciting, right?
I mean, yes.
Yes. That's why we're in this. It's exciting to start a new year.
It is. How do you do that well? That seems like a loaded question.
It does. It's a very loaded question.
But that is why we're here.
Yeah. One thing that I think about is strong relationships. And I think strong relationships with our students, their families, and our coworkers, right?
Sure. And we think about building relationships. Why?
We think about building relationships because communication is important, right? I want to have an understanding of what's important to you. I want you to know what's important to me, right? And if I know what some of your interests, some of your strengths, some of your motivators, then that gives me things to leverage and build upon.
Fabulous. All right. So building relationships first. Building relationships with students is going to change how you operate during the school year. And building relationships with families is also going to change how you operate during the school year. We always think about when we're teaching classes and when I'm teaching to pre-service teachers, I think one of the most impactful things you can do is remember that you never want to only be in contact with parents when things aren't going well. And those consistent communication with parents so that they're having contact based on positive interactions and connection and collaborative interactions with families builds that relationship so that when you do need to call them when there's an issue or a challenge or an opportunity to grow closer and strengthen that relationship, there's some trust built, as opposed to only calling when an issue has occurred, because there will be issues and we don't want that to happen. But if you never communicate unless there's an issue, then you're in trouble.
On that topic, as well as getting that communication, is figuring out how that collaborative partner, how they want to give that information. Is it a phone call? Is it a written report? Is it an email? What does that look like?
I always get dread when I get the phone call from the person that I would rather just get a text from or something like that. So I feel like, how are you eliciting that information from families? Like, how do you prefer to be communicated with?
Yeah.
Because a one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to work with our students, and it's most certainly not going to be beneficial with families.
Right.
And you can still send home something like an ongoing newsletter of events in a universal manner they can choose to engage with or not. But if you choose to engage with everyone the same way, it's most certainly not going to work for everyone in the same manner. So that's one takeaway there.
Yeah. And how are you getting that information? Right when students come in, maybe you know your families and your students a couple weeks before. Are you sending an email or a Google form? How are you gaining that information?
Or a back to school night.
Back to school night's another option, right? But it's important to be thinking about these pieces so the information that you're getting is clear and we're getting it to start off the year.
Yep. One of the other pieces that is always one of the pieces that I thought of with students is, how are you gaining information on their current strengths and interests? Students change all the time. That is why they are students in our classrooms year over year. They are changing constantly. What they're interested in changes constantly. So how are you gaining their current information?
Yeah. So something that I found super helpful is such as an interest survey or a motivation survey. Our consultation team at 916 has done a nice job collecting resources for students all the way from early childhood to adult. So that's something we can link in the show notes. if you want to peruse what surveys are available,
Sure.
that's something that you can use to get some of that information. Because if we are understanding student strengths and interests, we can use that or leverage those interests to support or increase engagement.
For instruction and for reinforcer ideas, for sure. But it comes in all of those ways, but also connection opportunities with students and with families, especially if you have them fill it out together. Mm-hmm.
And when you know those, write them down and share them. As a support staff, what should they know? If I know that my student's interested in Pokemon, that's something I can easily do some research around and engage with them right off the bat. Really, I want to establish that rapport.
I immediately started thinking about an example that I had of a staff member who knew that a particular student only liked certain colors.
Okay.
So those were the only ones that they wore to school.
Okay.
So that they could always talk about the colors that they were wearing. I was like, you're amazing. I don't even know. I was like, no, I don't even own the color orange in my wardrobe. And so I cannot wear that student's favorite color. And you go out and only wear these colors. It was the most incredible thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah.
But they knew that, and so they would choose when they were working with that student to only wear that student's favorite color so that they could talk about it. And like,
I love it.
I wore these favorite clothes for you, and look, I'm wearing this purple shirt today. I was like, oh, I don't understand. Like, it would never occur to me to do that, but that was at the forefront of their mind. It's like, you're the most incredible human. Anyway. All right.
So I think about that. I also think about tapping into some of the previous podcasts, such as like when we're starting off the school year, we want strong routines. We want those routines to be visual. We want to teach to the routine. We want to practice it, role play. Thinking about how are we setting up expectations, another podcast. So like into those pieces, having those set up when students enter the room, gaining feedback and voice initially, and then reshaping is something that I think is super important when you start the school year.
And using especially that classroom expectation as an opportunity to continue to build relationships with students.
Yeah.
And those repeated practices, those routines, those go a long way for showing that you are doing the things that you set out to do. You said you were going to do this routine, do it.
Yeah.
Students, it builds ongoing trust and your continued relationship with those students and those families when you're doing the things that you said you were going to do.
And it's predictable, which is a trauma-informed practice. It supports so many of our learners.
Yes. One of the other pieces that I'm going to encourage you to listen to, if you haven't listened to it in a while, is one of our earliest podcasts talks about, as you have new students in your classroom, or as you're looking at the earlier weeks of a new school year, thinking about this tool that's called the LSIP, and it's the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems. As you're thinking about how you're going to team with your collaborative partners, your multidisciplinary team members, your paraprofessionals, however your team is built, right? Your administrators, your coordinator, whoever is a part of your team, right? How are you framing? What is your mental model around solving these issues as they arrive, right? Because if you were not satisfied with how that went in your previous school year, you have to make a plan to do it differently. You have to set up a plan so that you're doing it differently. And that typically can come in the form of a different tool. And I would say, think about this tool. It is very simple as a tool, but it's a complex system to roll out if you haven't trained yourself in it. The training is free. It is online to do it. And it is a system that says do one thing at a time, which is also a very supportive thing when you're working with students that have so many things going on at all the same time. And as staff, when we just say we do all the things, like, we are not kidding. I know how hard it is when I say something as flippant as we do all the things. You have to understand that a tool that says, all right, you're going to pick one. What is your highest priority? And we're going to work to solve that one.
Right.
And it is a skills-based tool. It is not just nailing down this thing and placing blame there. There's a skill behind that. That is, again, the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems. We can put that in the show notes as well.
Ross Green, Lives in the Balance. Again, there's videos and the resources. I also think it helps with that mind shift of students come into school doing the best that they can, right?
Yep.
And so meeting them where they're at and building skills from there is going to be so important. Removing some of those barriers in regards to access or the environment to support them accessing their learning easier is going to be key. So again, Lives in the Balance, Ross Green fans,
Yep.
it's another great tool to tap into.
Yep.
I want to just speak before we conclude this episode about proactive versus reactive, right? We want to be as proactive as we can. And that means having those visual schedules so students know where to go, having a home base where they can add their stuff, or a space where they take a break, right? You know your students, you know what they need. If you are noticing that you are engaging in a lot of reactive responses, I'm going to urge you to reflect and think about, during those reactive times, is there a tool? Is there a skill I can focus on? Is there a lagging skill that I need to teach to? Is there an environmental barrier that I can remove so that student can access their learning a little bit? But we're all going to have those reactive responses. And what we as educators need to do is come back and think about that. How did it go? What do I need to do differently? How can I teach? How can we support and gain that student's voice in the process?
I would say sometimes with that pivot from reactive to proactive, you might start noticing as you reflect that there might be a gap in that plan. Oh, I'm trying to be proactive and then I hit this point and there's something missing, or this barrier, like you said. As the more you reflect on the process of what gets you there, or it results here, right? And make it as objective and unemotional as you can. So it's not about me doing something wrong or the student being wrong or an issue. Then it's easier to solve in a less emotional way, because we're trying to work together to set everyone up to be successful.
Right.
And keeping those conversations student-centered, that comes back to that mental mindsets, like, how are we agreeing to do this work together at the start of this school year?
Right.
How are we going to talk about unsolved problems? How are we going to address challenges as they arise? How are we going to work together when there's something that needs to be made for the classroom? What's our system for telling the teacher that something needs to be made, that there's a visual that needs to be done, or that there's an issue of this thing that's running out? Like, the more you let those things stack up, the more stressors are going to be impacting your system if there isn't a way to address them that is simple and planned out ahead of time. It's the same thing for our students in those places, right? So our staff want to do well. They want to implement what you've spent a ton of time being trained how to do, and then being passionate educators takes a lot of energy and time, and we applaud you for that. We want to be here to support you to do that well, and they keep showing up because it's important to them. Keeping those conversations student-centered, and what do those students need to be successful? What is the skill we're trying to teach? What is the gap? What are our tools to doing that well for the year? What are our agreements to having these conversations? Because the more it's focused on the student, the less it's focused on the adults, and it will be energy better directed in most circumstances when it is that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. All right. This one was a short and sweet one because it's the start of school year. No one's got time for that.
You got it, though. We wish
You
you
got
the
this.
best. You got this.
All right. We will link a lot of things for you in the show notes. And there are other podcast episodes for some of the things that we talked about. So around routines and about trauma-informed practices and mental models and the ALSEPs. Take a look at those if you're going to dig deeper on any one of those topics, and reach out. There's a link on the podcast website that I will also put in the show notes. If you have topics that you want us to talk about or unpack further on a future episode, please tell us. We want to make sure that we are always giving you information that is helpful to you and that you want to know. So reach out.
Yeah, we want to hear from you. See you later, sinners.